Imagine this. You walk into a room filled with strangers. Laughter hums in the corners, the air feels light. But somehow you shrink. Your shoulders tighten, your breath shortens, your eyes scan for an exit rather than a connection. No one has wronged you. No one has even looked at you. And yet, a weight presses against your chest like the ghost of something long forgotten but not gone. You don't remember exactly when it started. Maybe it was that one night years ago. Maybe it was years of subtle silence, of not being seen, not being chosen. Maybe it wasn't loud enough to leave a scar, but loud enough to change the way you carry your name. Now you call it social anxiety or trust issues, or I'm just not that outgoing. You laugh it off with self-deprecating jokes. You've even convinced yourself it's just your personality. But what if it's not? What if what you call your identity is actually the bruise of your unhealed pain, fossilized over time into your very sense of self? You didn't choose it, but it chose you. Wrapped itself around your nervous system, rewired your reactions, whispered in your thoughts until its voice became your own. Now you walk through life not as yourself, but as the story you told to survive. This is the paradox. You think you've moved on, but it's not behind you. It's inside you. And here's the deeper dilemma. Healing doesn't always look like light and transcendence. Sometimes it feels like violence, like dismantling everything you believe to be you. Because if your story of suffering is your compass, then who are you without it? Let's ask a more dangerous question. What if you're loyal to your trauma, not out of weakness, but because it became the only map you had? It taught you how to see the world. It told you what to expect from others. It gave you rules. Don't trust too easily. Always be on guard. Keep quiet to stay safe. Smile so they won't ask questions. You survived. That's no small thing. But somewhere along the way, you mistook survival for identity. You thought, this is just who I am. No, this is who you had to be. And now the world praises you for it. You're independent, you're strong, you're unbothered. But behind those compliments, something feels hollow. Because what people admire is the armor, not the soul beneath it. So ask yourself, are you truly you? Or are you the defense mechanism you built to never feel that pain again? And if you were to lay that armor down, even for a moment, what would be left of you? Would you recognize the softness hiding underneath the sharp edges? Would you mourn the time lost in pretending to be okay? Would you finally feel after all these years what it's like to be real again? The world tells you to be yourself, but never warns you what it actually costs. Because being yourself means peeling back years of adaptation, performance, and coping. It means confronting the truth that many parts of you were built in response to pain and have now become you. This is the quiet tragedy of trauma. Not just what it does to you in the moment, but what it convinces you to become in the aftermath. You think you're healing by moving on, but you're just decorating your prison. So now the question grows louder, heavier. If your personality was shaped by pain, then is your entire self a performance? This isn't a call to shame, this is a call to awaken, to pause and ask, what if I've mistaken survival strategies for authenticity? What if the most important parts of me were formed not out of desire but out of fear? And if that's true, can I ever go back? You can't unlive what happened, but you can unbecome what it turned you into. Not to erase the past, but to reclaim what it stole. Because somewhere inside you, beneath the layers of reaction, protection, and performance, there is a version of you untouched by trauma. Not innocent, not naive, but whole, waiting, watching, wondering if you'll ever come back. And the journey toward that self begins with a brutal, beautiful recognition. You are not your wounds, but your wounds have been speaking on your behalf for far too long. So before we talk about healing, before we define growth, we have to understand how trauma became you. Because if you don't know where your identity ends and your pain begins, you'll never know what parts of you are truly yours. And that is where we begin. To truly understand how trauma becomes identity, we have to go beneath the surface. We have to explore how the mind responds to pain, not just in the moment, but in how it reshapes your very sense of who you are. Psychologists like Gabor Maté argue that trauma isn't just what happens to you, it's what happens inside you as a result. It's not the event, it's the absence of emotional integration. The wound becomes a filter through which you see yourself, others, and the world. This means even without physical abuse, neglect, or violence, you can still be deeply traumatized if you lacked emotional safety. A parent who never saw you, a teacher who dismissed your pain, a culture that told you to toughen up instead of listening. Over time, you stopped expecting to be seen and started adapting to not being seen. Enter Carl Jung, who offered a terrifying insight. When we deny parts of ourselves, they don't disappear. They slip into the shadow, the unconscious mind. Jung believed that trauma fragments the psyche. The parts of you that felt ashamed, afraid, or abandoned are pushed into the unconscious where they live unseen, but not inactive. They guide your choices, your relationships, your reactions from the shadows. So you grow up, you succeed, you function, but deep inside you're still that unheard child, that scared teenager, that humiliated soul carrying pain that no one acknowledged. And you begin building yourself not on your desires but on your defenses. You might think, I'm just really independent. I don't trust people easily. I work better alone. But these aren't truths. They're trauma-informed identities. They protect you, yes, but they also limit you. And the tragedy? You think it's just who you are. You've forgotten who you were before the pain. Nietzsche said, "Man is a rope stretched between the animal and the Übermensch." In other words, we are in constant transformation, but trauma freezes that rope. It keeps you in survival mode. You're no longer evolving, you're repeating, reacting instead of creating. This is where Stoic philosophy comes in with a harsh but liberating truth. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is a choice. Seneca, writing during times of personal exile and public corruption, observed, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." But what if your imagination, your self-concept, is built from pain? What if the image of you is a distortion born out of fear, rejection, or loss? The Stoics taught detachment, not from life, but from false beliefs. If your identity is built on wounds, then healing isn't just about feeling better. It's about tearing down the false self, brick by brick, a terrifying task. Because who are you without your defenses? Who are you without your story of pain? And here's where Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychologist, brings in another crucial layer. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. That space, it's where identity can be reclaimed. It's the moment where you pause and ask, am I reacting from my past or choosing from my present? Is this who I am? Or who I became to survive? Because here's the hidden problem. Trauma feels true. And when something feels true, you rarely question it. That's why people carry toxic beliefs like, I'm not lovable. If I open up, I'll be hurt. People always leave. These aren't observations, they're internalized traumas mistaken for facts. And when those beliefs shape your self-image, you start protecting your pain instead of healing it. You cling to the false safety of the identity that grew around the wound. Because even if it's painful, at least it's familiar. But let's be brutally honest. If your identity is shaped by wounds, then your future is shaped by fear. Unless you pause, unless you question, unless you challenge the narrative you've been living inside. Jung believed that the path to wholeness begins with confrontation. Not comfort, not positivity, confrontation. Facing the parts of you that you've banished, the vulnerability you buried, the grief you avoided, the anger you were told was dangerous, the shame you thought you had to carry in silence. Because only when you integrate those lost parts can you begin to live as a whole human, rather than a fragmented survivor. This is not easy. It's not quick. It's not glamorous. It's the quiet, brutal, liberating work of saying, this is not who I am. This is what I became. And then asking, who am I without the story? Let's talk about the cost. Not the cost of trauma that's already been paid, but the cost of not healing it. Because if trauma becomes identity and identity becomes your life, then unhealed trauma becomes the silent architect of your future. Every decision shaped by fear of rejection, every relationship filtered through a lens of mistrust, every opportunity evaluated by how safe it feels, not how true it is to your calling. You don't notice it at first. You just feel stuck. You feel like you're running on autopilot, performing a version of yourself that fits in, that doesn't make waves, that doesn't ask for too much. Eventually, life becomes a loop. Not a journey forward, but a rotation around your past. And the longer you stay there, the harder it is to leave. Carl Jung warned of this when he said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." In other words, what you don't confront in yourself becomes your destiny. Not because you're cursed, but because you never interrupted the cycle. And that cycle has a price. It costs you connection, because you don't let anyone see the real you. It costs you joy, because you're always bracing for the next disappointment. It costs you purpose, because survival is a full-time job. The most painful part. You might reach the end of your life never having met yourself, only the self that was built to cope. But here's the paradox. While the cost of not healing is massive, the path to healing begins with something small. A shift in awareness, a moment of honesty, a willingness to feel what you've avoided. The Stoics taught that suffering comes not from the event, but from our judgment of the event. Seneca wrote, "He is most powerful who has power over himself." Self-mastery doesn't mean perfection. It means taking back authorship of your identity from the hands of your past. It means saying, "I may have been shaped by pain, but I will no longer be it." This is where the power of transformation begins, not with changing your outer life, but with reclaiming the inner narrative. You start by asking, whose voice is this in my head? Who taught me I wasn't enough? What part of me am I still hiding to feel accepted? And the most important question of all, what do I need to grieve so I can grow? Because healing isn't just about moving on. It's about mourning what you never got. The love, the safety, the understanding, the version of you that never had to break in the first place. And here's the truth no one tells you. When you begin this work, your old identity will fight you. Not because it's evil, but because it was created to protect you. That anger, that distance, that sarcasm, that perfectionism. They all served a purpose. They kept you safe when you didn't have the tools, but now they're keeping you small. And you will grieve their loss. You'll feel naked without your armor. You'll wonder if it's even worth it, because healing doesn't always feel like progress. It often feels like collapse. But collapse is not the end. It's the clearing, the burning down of false self, so the true self can finally breathe. Viktor Frankl believed that meaning was the path through any suffering. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. But how do you change yourself if you don't even know who you are beneath the trauma? That's the transformation. It's not about becoming someone else. It's about unbecoming everything that was never you. The masks, the coping mechanisms, the performance, gone, and underneath someone raw but real. Not perfect, but whole. And when you meet that version of you, perhaps for the first time in your life, you'll realize the true cost was not the pain itself, but the years spent living a life built around it. Now here's what they never tell you. There's power in reclaiming what was taken, not by denying your past, but by integrating it. By looking into the mirror of your own shadow and saying, "You don't scare me anymore. I'm ready to come home to myself." It's one thing to realize that your identity may have been shaped by trauma. It's another to reclaim it. So let's move from insight to action. Not grand gestures, not instant transformation, but quiet, consistent practices that chip away at the false self and allow the real one to emerge. The first step is awareness. You can't heal what you don't see. But awareness isn't just noticing your behavior. It's noticing it without shame. Start by catching the moments when you avoid eye contact for no clear reason. Say, "I'm fine," when you're not. Laugh off something that actually hurt. Feel the need to be productive even when you're exhausted. Don't label these as flaws, label them as signals. Each reaction is a breadcrumb that leads back to a wound. You are not broken. You are patterned, and patterns can be rewritten, but only after they're recognized. Step 2. Identify the protective personality. This is the version of you that formed to keep you safe. They might show up as the overachiever who thinks love must be earned, the perfectionist who believes mistakes make you unworthy, the loner who avoids rejection by avoiding people. Give this part of you a name if it helps. Write a letter to them, thank them, and then ask, "What were you protecting me from?" When you realize that your personality was sometimes a defense strategy, you stop shaming it and start gently dismantling it. Step 3. Begin shadow work. Carl Jung's concept of the shadow is crucial here. The shadow is everything you've repressed, denied, or deemed unacceptable. It's not evil, it's unintegrated. And as Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Start with a few hard questions. What qualities in others trigger me the most? They often reflect my shadow. What part of myself am I most ashamed of? When do I perform instead of being authentic? You can explore this through journaling, therapy, or even honest conversations with people you trust. Your shadow isn't there to shame you. It's there to complete you. Step 4. Grieve the old self. This is a step many skip, but it's vital. You can't just build the new you on top of the ruins of the old. You have to grieve the identity you're letting go of. Grieve the years spent performing. Grieve the relationships that never saw the real you. Grieve the coping mechanisms that once kept you safe. Cry, reflect, sit with it. This is not weakness. It's a funeral for the false self. And in that mourning, something beautiful happens. You create space. Step 5. Practice micro-authenticity. You don't have to reinvent your life overnight. Start small. Say no when you mean no. Share your opinion without editing it for approval. Let someone see your fear without disguising it as confidence. Express sadness instead of turning it into sarcasm. Each moment of honesty is an act of self-rescue. Each step into vulnerability weakens the grip of the trauma self. That's how healing happens, not in leaps, but in layers. Step 6. Stop worshiping survival. This one's difficult because many people are proud of how strong they are. They survived abuse, neglect, loneliness, disconnection, and yes, that strength is admirable. But survival is not the same as wholeness. Stop measuring your worth by how much you've endured. Start measuring it by how free you allow yourself to be. Don't build your identity around your pain. Build it around your truth. Step 7. Rewire the mind with new beliefs. Your trauma planted certain beliefs. I'm not enough. People can't be trusted. If I'm not perfect, I'll be abandoned. Now you must uproot and replace them, not through fake positivity, but through earned truths. Affirmations aren't magic, but if practiced consistently, they become beliefs. Try, I am allowed to be seen in my imperfection. Safety is not found in control, but in self-trust. I do not owe my value to anyone's approval. Speak them, write them, breathe them. You are literally training your brain to stop confusing trauma with identity. Step 8. Seek depth, not distraction. Modern life is engineered to keep you numb. Endless scrolling, overstimulation, empty entertainment. They offer escape, not healing. If you want to reclaim yourself, you must create stillness. This is where philosophy re-enters the picture. Start reading Stoicism, study Jung, reflect on Viktor Frankl. These thinkers weren't just theorizing, they were building maps for the soul. Meditate, journal, take long walks in silence. Let discomfort rise, let boredom speak, let your inner world finally breathe. You'll be surprised what you hear. The goal is not to erase your past, it's to own it without becoming it. Trauma may have shaped you, but now you shape yourself. Piece by piece, truth by truth, step by sacred step. Because when you stop performing and start integrating, you'll discover a version of you that feels unfamiliar, but finally free. By now, you've seen it clearly. The story you call me may not be yours. It may be a trauma script, a survival mask, a borrowed voice, and that realization hurts. It's supposed to, because pain is what breaks the spell. For years, you were told to just move on, to get over it, to be stronger. But no one told you how deeply trauma weaves itself into identity. How it doesn't just leave scars on the body, it rewrites the map of the soul. It changes what you expect from love, what you allow yourself to dream, how you see yourself in a mirror, and worst of all, it makes you forget that you ever existed before the pain. But now you know. And with that knowing comes responsibility. This is your task. To meet the parts of you that were created to survive, thank them for getting you here, and let them rest. Because survival is no longer the goal. Freedom is. You are not your wounds. But if you don't face them, they will define you. They will shape every word you speak, every choice you make, every love you accept or push away. That's why awareness alone is not enough. You must act. And sometimes action means unbecoming. It means saying goodbye to the self who got you through the darkest nights, so the self who was meant to live fully can finally take your place. That transition, it's not easy. It's terrifying. Because we fear the unknown more than we fear the familiar pain. But if you stay in the false self, the world will never meet the real you. And you will never meet them either. This journey isn't about becoming someone better. It's about remembering who you were before the world taught you to forget. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." That's the work, not self-improvement, self-reclamation. To see the scared child within you not as broken, but as the purest evidence that you tried. To love the parts you were told were unlovable. To stop apologizing for your wounds and start honoring what they revealed. And once you start living from this place, not your trauma, not your ego, but your truth, everything changes. Not all at once, and not without pain, but real, lasting, liberating. You don't need to perform, you don't need to prove. You just need to return to what is raw, honest, and real. And in doing so, you stop being a victim of your story and then become the author of it. So let this video be your turning point. The invitation to begin, not with perfection, but with presence. Not with trying to be someone new, but with the courage to stop pretending. And when the pain rises again, and it will, don't run, don't numb, don't shame yourself, face it, feel it, integrate it, because on the other side of that pain is not just healing, it's home. And it's been waiting for you. You are not too damaged. You are not too late. You are not your past. You are a living soul who adapted to pain, but who is now ready to remember their power. Welcome back. If you've been called to something deeper, welcome. Resilient Psyche is not just a channel. It's the beginning of your return to strength. Thanks for being courageous.